My name is Lisa. I'm with Life Changes. We are starting a calendar next year, and we're putting people in recovery in that calendar. And Adam is going to be in May because that's his clean date. That's when he started his new journey in life. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his life. First, we'll start with, how was your childhood when you were growing up?
I was very fortunate. I had a very privileged childhood. Grew up in upper middle class in North County, San Diego. Very, very great parents. Addiction runs in my family, mostly alcoholism. But I was blessed. I mean, my summers were spent on my grandparents' 38-foot trawler out at their house in Oxnard on their harbor, or at their lake house in Thousand Oaks on Lake Sherwood.
Nice.
Or at the beach all over San Diego County. You know, I played sports. I was good in school, straight A student up until high school, when I really just started falling off and partying a little harder. But yeah, my parents really pushed me with my grades and my schooling, all in advanced placement classes, summer school every year.
Nice.
Took my SAT as a freshman, you know.
So tell me when you first started seeing that drugs were becoming an issue in your life.
Well, I started drinking at 8 years old, and alcohol was accepted in my family. So I was allowed to drink at family functions, anything like that. I started smoking pot at 10. And right from the beginning, you know, I knew there was a problem, but because I liked it a little too much. But once I started associating it with hanging out with friends and partying, and you know, I always wanted to fit in. I always wanted to be the life of the party. It started really taking off, and by the time I was 13, I had done basically everything under the sun, and it just got worse and worse, especially because I started trafficking and selling a lot of drugs all over San Diego County. And you know, with close proximity to Tijuana and everything else, you know, easy access to large amounts of narcotics. So it just kind of blew up from there.
So did your parents or anybody start noticing that kind of behavior, or were you hiding it really well?
I hid it really well for a while, but you can only hide it for so long.
Right.
I was probably about 16 or 17, and then it really started affecting my health, and I got really skinny and was just not doing well, and that's when I started skipping school more and failing classes. Not really failing, but my parents considered C's as failing. So they started noticing, and that's when they took me to the doctor and got me drug tested, and I popped for like, I don't even know, like at least 4 different narcotics.
Oh my goodness.
And but they really they didn't know how to handle me. They didn't know what to do. They just kind of sat back and watched me start to spiral even farther. Till, you know, I did get my high school diploma, and I did go to community college in San Diego, but I was still running amok, running and gunning, and then I caught my first case. I was working at a tattoo shop as a piercer and going to school, and a friend set me up, and I got arrested for 6 felony possession with intents of 6 different Schedule 1 narcotics. And luckily, they were able to drop them down to 6 felony possessions, and I pled no contest to possession of ecstasy. And back 20 years ago, that was a big deal. But they put me in drug court.
And that was in California?
In San Diego. And I still couldn't stay clean through that. And my higher power was so good to me. I mean, I got put in an outpatient program where once a week I would go breathalyze and take a piss test and sit in classes. And my 3rd week in, my best friend growing up had got caught in a case and got put in the outpatient part of the program, and had seen me in there and volunteered to watch the outpatient people piss every week. So every week I'd go in and he was pissing for me.
No.
So it enabled me even farther. I mean, it was every step of my journey, someone, family, friends enabled me and let me kind of keep my addiction
Active.
active and just going. And you know, I finished drug court and got it expunged from my record. I don't know how. And then I knew I needed to change because life was just still rough, no matter how hard I tried. And I packed. I had met my ex-wife, my now ex-wife, and she had 2 kids, and we were struggling. And I packed us up and we moved to Las Vegas, thinking, okay, I need to get out of San Diego where my addiction runs rampant. Let's move to Vegas. And worked for a little while, but I never really was clean. I still drank and smoked pot, and you know, subsidized my addiction for methamphetamine with other things. And it, you know, it worked for a while, but 2 addicts together in a toxic relationship, it always resurfaced.
Right.
You know, so the one good thing was I found my career during that time about 19 years ago, and that's the only thing that's really made sense in my life. Throughout the addiction, the ups and downs, all the tough times was work. So I kind of always threw myself into work, but I was still getting high. You know, the old saying, like, do more drugs so you can work harder, so you can buy more drugs, so you can do more drugs, so you can work harder, was my life for a long, long time. And eventually it ruined my marriage. You know, it was a toxic relationship. I was not happy for a long time, but we finally separated, and then I moved to Arizona for a little bit and worked out there and trafficked more drugs, because that was always my go-to, was trafficking pounds of methamphetamine across state lines. Never got caught. I don't know, by the grace of God. I don't know how. And finally I moved back to Vegas again, and you know, because I cultivated a career, I did have connections and a good resume, and a company offered me a job to move to Reno and be a foreman on the Gigafactory job. And so I moved out here with another girlfriend that was no good and was just another addict that we did not do well together. You know, moved out here and was working, but still feeding my addiction, you know, and it just got worse because in Vegas there wasn't a needle exchange. So I had to order all my supplies on eBay and have them delivered. Moving out here, it was a little bit more accessible, and the money I was making, my gross pay a week was $4,500 to $5,000 a week. My weekly checks take home about $3,000 to $3,500 a week take home, and it just enabled that addiction to grow even farther. And the gambling, the drugs just escalated and escalated to the point of where I caught another case and went to par and pled that out and got probation. And no matter what, like, you know, I couldn't even be in jail and stay clean. We were trading soups for all sorts of pills and snorting pills while I was in there. And the whole time I was in there, like, I just was like, okay, as soon as I get out, I'm going to figure out this probation thing, and I'm going to go down to Hope's and get me some new rigs, and I'm going to get some dope. And that's exactly what I did. And at that point, my family had had enough. My mom, my stepdad, my dad, my stepmom, who had, you know, despite me making a good living my entire life, I've always lived paycheck to paycheck. I could never get ahead. And, you know, it was by my own fault, but I manipulated everyone in my life to make ends meet and to keep my addiction going, until finally they had enough and they stepped back and said, we're done. You're on your own. And when that happened, I took it even farther, and in a very short period of time, I lost my job. I was living on the streets and surviving off free play and food comps that from when I was making money, I had gambled so much that for a few months I was able to survive on that, but living on the streets during the winter. And it all kind of culminated in me having enough and trying to take my own life. And I remember I had bought a $200 minivan and it had no back seats in it. And I decided I was done, and I took that seatbelt and I wrapped it around my neck and I leaned into it as hard as I could. And I blacked out, and the seatbelt, I guess, went slack, and I came to like an hour later, kind of incoherent, not knowing what's going on. But I sat up and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I finally said, I don't fucking want this anymore. And I truly actually meant it. Every other time I'd slowed my addiction or slowed my using was for a purpose, you know, to fool everyone just enough to keep that manipulation going, to keep everyone, you know, thinking, oh, he's turned over a new leaf, he's trying, or to keep that job or to get the new job. You know, I never stopped using, but this time was different. I truly did not want that life anymore. And so I haven't used since. And that was May 24th, 2018. And unfortunately for me, parole and probation was looking for me at that point. And they were going to violate me and send me to prison to serve my term. But I had decided, I was like, okay, I'm going to try and clean up, and I'm going to show up there and then just turn myself in. And day 6 of not using, and I was sleeping on a couch in a trap house and still not using. And I decided, I walked into PMP and I said, here I am. And I told him, you know, my probation officer was not there, and the desk sergeant was there. And he said, you know, I shouldn't give you another chance. He's like, why should I? And I just told him I need help. I want help. And he said, well, can you pee for me? And I said, yeah, but it's probably going to be dirty. And it was. But he said, you know, I don't know if I should, but let me make a phone call. And that's when he called you. Yeah. Changed my life, you know. It was the start of my life finally. At 37 years old, I finally saw hope again. And after he called you and you said that you'd take me in, he said, well, do you have someone that can take care of the deposit for you? And I said, well, maybe, but they don't want to hear from me, especially not for money. And he called, and my mom's like, yeah, we won't send him money, but we'll send you money. And that's what they did. And the desk sergeant, Sergeant Evans, told me, he's like, you have till 1 o'clock to report to Life Changes, or you're going to prison. And that's what I did.
And you've been strong ever since.
Yep.
You've been doing amazing.
It's I always say Life Changes changed my life, and it did. You know, it's given me something I always longed for that I never thought possible. You know, recovery has been good to me. Really good to me. So,
and you're doing amazing. You did all the hard work.
It's, you know, it's the connections I've made in recovery. Mm-hmm. The family, the friends, the coworkers, the people in the NA fellowship that have really kept me strong and shown me a new way of life, shown me how to do things without getting loaded, you know, how to have fun without getting loaded. You know, I used to always think I needed drugs to keep working, oh, I'm tired, you know, and I got to go to work, so I need a bunch of meth to keep going and work. But really, I just needed to live a clean life, and
right.
You know, I have all the energy and all the hope and everything I need to keep going. You know, I wake up every morning and I smile and I look at myself in the mirror and I actually like myself again.
And you're meal prepping, and your family
Yeah.
came to see you. His mom and everyone came to see him.
Yeah, you know, that is the greatest gift the recovery has given me, is my family back, my mom especially. You know, because they had given up on me, and they told me that they were just waiting for the day that they would get a phone call that I was dead, or that I was serving a lengthy prison sentence. So, you know, but instead they got the call.
You're 1 year clean.
Yeah, and they've come out to celebrate every milestone, my 6 months, my 1 year. They've been here for all of it. And every time I get a new key tag, I get an extra one and I present my mom.
Oh.
You know, because she suffered through my addiction just as much as I did. And every milestone, she shares in it just as much as I do. So it's making me all teary-eyed.
I know, you're getting me teary-eyed.
But she always says that she's my biggest fan, and it's true.
Oh.
She's been there for me through everything, and I put her through so much. But she, you know, finally I get to show her the kind of person I really am, because I'm just finally discovering who I am.
Right.
You know, and even my stepdad, they came out to see me at 6 months, and he's like, you know, it's nice to finally meet you. I've known the man over 20 years, and he's like, it's nice to finally meet the real Adam.
Oh.
You know, and feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good. I got a great job. I have great friends at work.
Right.
You know, I work a good, solid program, and my recovery is dependent on it. But you know, I do what they say. I go to meetings. I follow suggestions. I have a sponsor. I work the steps, and I'm of
That's it.
service.
So if you could tell the addict that's still suffering out there some special words, what would you say?
That recovery is possible. That there is hope. You know, I spent almost 30 years in my active addiction, 24 years with my drug of choice, and many, many years sticking a needle in my arm. And I basically just decided that this was what life was. And it's not. There is more. There's so much more to life. Life can be good if you let it. You just got to reach out and ask for help, because there are people that will help.
That's good. So he's going to be Mr. May in our calendar.
Yeah.
You guys need to hear more of his story in our calendar. Thank you.